Sleep tight, my little boy.
Director Patrick Rand brings us Mom from 1990. He also co-wrote the movie. Now, I should explain this is actually a 1990 movie, but you may see 1991 on some releases because it was released in the UK in 1990, but not in the States until 91. So it's, I guess, depending on which date you are going for there. And this one stars Jeanne Davis, Brian James, and a small role from Claudia Christian as well. Now, this is a monster movie. I guess the nearest thing to liken it to is a werewolf, although it never explicitly says it's a werewolf, and it doesn't quite follow the same rules, but essentially it's a werewolf movie. The story initially focuses on Brian James's character, who is a werewolf that is killing people and leaving the police dumbfounded, but they think it's like a serial killer, which I suppose it is. And he's moving across country and he ends up crossing paths with this elderly old lady where he wants to rent a spare room. And her kind of pushiness ultimately makes him expose himself as a werewolf. So to cover his tracks, he bites her and transforms her into a monster as well. And now they have to go and hunt together because they both have a craving for kind of flesh, living flesh. It's not long before this elderly woman's son soon finds out about this. And once Brian James's character is out the movie, it's then like, what does he do with his mum, who is now desperately trying to kind of get out the house so she can go and hunt, and he's trying to kind of stop her from killing people, but also sort of covering her tracks, all the while whilst covering the story as a reporter and trying to kind of hide this from his fiancée. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour? The big thing for me is characterisation in this movie. I thought the characterisation was fantastic. So the two main characters are obviously the mum and her son. And I just love their kind of dynamic. I thought both actors did a great job here of having a very complex relationship where they both love each other, but they're both at odds with each other. And just the kind of the situation that is building, and this guy completely out of his depth, doesn't really know what to do. And the situation is worse and worse and worse as the film goes on, where people get misconstrued the wrong idea. The bodies are kind of piling up, and he's trying to keep his mum under control. All the while, she's kind of getting more and more dangerous and feral, and he's worried obviously that she might attack him or his partner, and she's pregnant and stuff, and what will actually happen. So I thought it was a fantastic kind of like relationship, and you really feel like, I think the tragic kind of circumstances between these two characters. And then this movie kind of plays a little bit like a kind of horror comedy, but I still think it has some genuine kind of moments of tragedy in it, and some good emotional beats. And this guy, I mean, he is just like pushed to the limit, and it's kind of like, in a way, quite a kind of realistic portrayal. I mean, he has no idea about what he's going to do. There's no like he's trying to find a cure, because he just doesn't know. He doesn't know what the actual anything about this kind of curse and what the actual kind of rules are. He does find out one weakness, but it's a really kind of good back and forth between these kind of two characters. I think very well done. Very kind of like a good emotional beats, and just great chemistry between these two actors. So I really like that. And I also really like the kind of the situation that is ever kind of building. The police are kind of closing in. I mean, they know that there's a serial killer, but what they don't know is that this mum now is kind of like the primary killer compared to like who it was in the beginning, which is Brian James' character. And, you know, it's like the walls are kind of closing in, sort of time's running out, she is getting worse. And I think that was all great. And, you know, the way that they've depicted this kind of old lady style kind of monster, I think is fantastic. Her first victim, for example, she feels a bit guilty that she picks on this kind of homeless man. So before killing him, she takes him out and gets him something to eat, and then kind of just and then devours him because she's kind of trying to alleviate her guilt and stuff. So I think this movie had quite a lot of kind of layers in it. When we do see our kind of creature, I think it's quite an impressive. I mean, it kind of looks like a werewolf. It's not, as I say, especially a werewolf, but there's no like full moon. But it's a kind of like a wolf-like beast that is transmitted through a bite, you know. So it kind of is a werewolf, but there's to hurt it. It's a different kind of method, you might say. But I thought the actual practical monster makeup was fun, and we have the kind of the partial transformations where, you know, this older lady, she's just looking, you know, she's got the kind of like the crazy contacts in and the kind of like the fangs and stuff. And she's sort of, her personality's still in there, but she's at the same time, she's kind of like, has this bloodlust. So I thought it was great. And I have to say I was thoroughly engaged in this movie. It's relatively obvious where it's going to go, I would say, but I was still kind of interested in the story, and it puts the characters first and then the horror second. Now that is going to be a negative as well, which we'll talk about, but I think this movie's focus on character makes you engaged in the characters and the story and their fate ultimately. So I thought that was all sort of pretty good. And when we do see our monsters, like I say, I think it's impressive, and it's surprisingly mature for like a movie from kind of 1990, straight to kind of VHS movie, which this was. So I thought this movie was actually a lot better than I was having any idea that it might be. What doesn't work is, as I say, I think the horror is put second here, and I feel if you look at reviews, and I haven't looked at any other reviews of this, but I have a feeling that it's probably going to say you don't see much of the monster, the kills are off screen for the most part, and it's lots of talking. I think that's probably going to be the critiques. And yes, I mean, one thing I would say that I would sort of kind of agree to a certain degree, if that is the case, is that we see much more of the monster in the beginning of the movie. We don't really see the full monster in the end, at the kind of the finale. And a movie really should be finishing strong, a big finish, you know, a big payoff. There is an emotional payoff, I would say, that I think is quite poignant, but there's not like a big like action sequence or VFX sequence towards the end. It actually finishes on, as I say, more of an emotive note. But yeah, you see most of the monster in the first 20 minutes of this film, and then it's only kind of partial transformations, and there is only kind of like off-screen kills. So there is that, and I have to say one particular victim, I didn't even register who it was, first of all, and it's quite a fairly short-lived but sort of somewhat important character, and because we don't see the actual deed happening, you're not quite sure on the aftermath who it is we're talking about, is all I'm going to say, because I don't want to spoil it. So yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, the movie could have had a little bit more of the kind of the actual creature effects throughout the movie. In particular, the end, it struck me as a little weird that they decided to have all the big VFX shots up front, but it is what it is. So yeah, I can imagine that's probably going to be the main critiques of this one, and you know, it is worth mentioning. There's quite a lot of blood and kind of body parts and stuff, but we don't really see much of the actual kind of kills and stuff. It's mostly the sort of the aftermath of it and things. So that's probably going to be the biggest kind of critiques with this movie. I think because this movie is trying to put emotions and character first, that was probably a conscious decision, and I do understand, because I do think it succeeds in that, but I think that you could have had your cake and eat it too, and have both these things be true at once, instead of kind of sacrificing sort of one for the other, if that makes sense. So that's really the kind of the critique for this movie, but I have to say this was a surprisingly enjoyable movie for me, and even with the kind of the lack of visuals maybe to a degree, I still enjoyed the performances and the character work and the idea of the story and where it kind of was going. So actually I'm going to say this is a 7 out of 10 for me. I quite enjoyed this one, more than I thought, as I say. Have you seen Mom, as you say in the States? We say Mum. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.